Early this morning, Israel launched a preemptive strike into southern Lebanon as Hezbollah was preparing to launch an extensive missile attack on Israel. About 100 Israeli Air Force planes went into action, hitting 40 Hezbollah launch sites and averting the attack. The terrorists still fired over 300 rockets and drones into northern Israel, as Hezbollah says its retaliatory strikes are done, at least for today. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Gallant, and Chief of Staff Halevi met and approved the preemptive action against Hezbollah overnight at IDF headquarters after it was determined that Hezbollah was poised to fire some 6,000 rockets and drones at north and central Israel, including Tel Aviv.
A short while ago, the IDF identified Hezbollah terrorist organization preparing to fire missiles, rockets towards Israeli territory. In a self-defense act to remove these threats, the IDF is striking terror targets in Lebanon from which Hezbollah was planning to launch their attacks on Israeli civilians.
Prime Minister Netanyahu made this announcement to the nation.
צה"ל פועל מאז בעוצמה לסכל את האיומים. הוא חיסל אלפי רקטות שכוונו לצפון הארץ, הוא מסכל גם איומים רבים אחרים, פועל בעוצמה גדולה, הן בהגנה והן בהתקפה. אני מבקש מכם, אזרחי ישראל, להישמע להנחיות פיקוד העורף. אנחנו נחושים לעשות הכל כדי להגן על המדינה שלנו, להחזיר את תושבי הצפון בבטחה לבתיהם, ולהמשיך לקיים כלל פשוט. מי שפוגע בנו, אנחנו פוגעים בו.
100 IDF fighter jets went into action, striking and eliminating thousands of Hezbollah rocket launcher barrels aimed for immediate fire toward targets deep inside Israel. More than 40 Hezbollah launch areas were struck. Israeli intelligence observed that Hezbollah was about to launch its largest attack of the current war. As a result, at about 5 a.m., the Air Force attacked targets primed for launchings. A Western intelligence official told the New York Times that Hezbollah had intended to strike Tel Aviv. Israel assessed that Hezbollah planned to target the IDF intel base at the Glilot area near Herzliya, where several IDF intelligence units and the Mossad headquarters are based. According to initial reports, Hezbollah's plans were severely disrupted by the preemptive strike. Following the Israeli attacks, Hezbollah announced it had begun its initial reprisals to the assassination of its chief of staff, Fuad Shukr, at the end of last month. Despite the Israeli preemptive action, Hezbollah still managed to fire hundreds of drones and rockets toward Israel in response to the Israeli blitz, targeting 11 IDF bases in northern Israel. It's unclear whether Hezbollah will continue to escalate its attacks and how far south it will fire. Hezbollah officials announced that the reprisals were done for today. Israeli officials say Israel is not interested in an escalation leading to a war in Lebanon. Officials say the IDF acted against a serious threat to millions of Israeli citizens. But we do not want war. The continuation of the escalation depends on Hezbollah's actions.
And joining us now with more on Hezbollah's attack on northern Israel is Yakov Salavan, the deputy head of the Golan Regional Council in northern Israel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So the north came under heavy attack from Hezbollah this morning, over 300 rockets and dozens of drones. How are you doing, and what is the situation like now?
So right now things are quiet but very tense. This morning, very early, we woke up to the understanding that we're going into a day of battle. And we had to cancel all summer camps, all community activities, all educational activities in the Golan, specifically where I'm speaking from. We have 0 seconds to reach shelters. Therefore, we had to tell all of our citizens, all of our residents to be right by bomb shelters. And in the last few hours, the Home Front Command has allowed us to do a few more things. We were able to open several pools, libraries, but still, things are very tense here. People are scared to go do their daily activities, and we understand that it's not over yet.
And the defense minister has said that the next 48 hours are critical. I mean, what is the feeling among the residents in the north? You said the situation is tense, but are they concerned? Are they hopeful that this might end up resolving the situation? I mean, what can you tell us?
Listen, we've been in war for almost 11 months now. This, what everyone saw this morning in the news, rockets and killer drones, is our weekly routine. And many people don't understand that. The feeling here in the north by the residents is that there is not enough of an understanding of what we're going through. I remind you that Sunday we're supposed to start the school year, but many parents don't feel it's safe to send their children on buses, on the roads, which are often under attack. And I got to tell you that this morning, with all the fact that we understood we're going into something that's very dangerous and very tense, there was some hope that finally the Israeli government and Israeli army are making a game-changing move against Hezbollah. We're very hopeful that maybe this strike that the IDF carried out, the successful strike, I must say, will maybe be a game changer that will create deterrence and allow to maybe bring a resolution that we can live with and people will feel comfortable starting the school year. However, the fact that after 350 rockets and killer drone attacks, the Israeli army and the home front say, okay, now we're going back to usual, brings a huge disappointment. People are very disappointed. We understand we will need to pay a price in order to allow the Israeli army to bring a resolution. We're willing to pay it, but it needs to be a good resolution.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important also to mention that there are still, tens of thousands of displaced Israelis from the northern communities. I mean, do you see an end in sight?
So, correct, we have 85,000 people who are refugees. Many of them, by the way, live in the Golan. I must say that the Golan wasn't evacuated. We made a moral and strategic decision that we are not leaving because we see what's happening in the communities where people were evacuated. The death toll is rising. People are just dying, and not from attacks, just being away from home for 11 months. Unemployment, families falling apart, communities falling apart. We are standing our ground. And unfortunately, no, there isn't any hope in sight because, again, as I mentioned before, people don't feel safe to come back home. And this morning, we had some hope that maybe a game-changing act that will allow people to feel safe to come back home is happening. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I'll say more than that. We're losing these communities not just because of people who are scared to come home, but also many people who were evacuated and are now living in the center of the country and not in the periphery, not in the frontier, suddenly are understanding what is life like in Tel Aviv and in Netanya. And as a friend of mine told me, why should I go back to the Lebanese border when I have malls all over me and great cinemas and culture and medical services? Life is great here. So if the Israeli government doesn't wake up and doesn't understand that we, first of all, need to allow people to feel safe to come back home, but also to create something extraordinary up here, that people will want to come up north, then it's the end of Zionism up here, and communities won't be able to get back to normal life here.
A harsh message to the government. Well, Yakov, we hope that you'll see quieter days and send our solidarity with Israel's northern citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's important to say we're strong, we're resilient, and we're going to win.
Absolutely. And with Israel's preemptive strike on Hezbollah in Lebanon early this morning, the country has taken precaution to protect its citizens ahead of a possible retaliation, with the Home Front Command imposing new restrictions just as the summer vacation comes to an end. ILTV's Ariela Lani is in Tel Aviv now with more information.
Yes, Nadar. So following the IDF's preemptive strike on Hezbollah in Lebanon earlier this morning, it definitely seemed as though tensions in the north were escalating and possibly very rapidly. And as a result, Israel put measures into place and took extra precaution to ensure the safety and protection of all civilians. And these measures included a range of things, such as temporarily pausing regular activity at Ben Gurion Airport. Flights departing were delayed and flights arriving were redirected. And even beaches in central Israel, such as Rishon LeZion, all the way to northern Israel, were closed. Most of these restrictions have now been lifted, specifically in central Israel. Very unsurprisingly, we've seen time and time again the very resilient nature of the Israeli people. They will not bow down to terror. They will not put their lives on hold. And so as of now, things are continuing as normal until further notice.
Thank you, Ariela. And this morning, for the first time since October 7th, the airport completely shut down. No planes traveled in or out for a couple of hours. ILTV's editor-in-chief Mayan Hoffman is at the airport now. Mayan, what's the situation?
Thank you, Lidar. I'm standing here at Ben Gurion International Airport. The airport is very quiet as a result of the number of flights that have either been canceled or delayed due to the heightened security situation. At around 5:19 this morning, the airport effectively shut down. Any flights that were expected to take off were grounded and sitting on the tarmac, and flights that were incoming were redirected to Ramon Airport in the south. That was while we were attacking Lebanon, and Hezbollah was firing over to us more than 320 rockets and UAVs, some of which we understand were aimed at Tel Aviv. The airport has since resumed flying, but the airport's authorities said that only around 50,000 passengers are expected to go in and out of the airport today on around 320 flights. That is many fewer than what we would normally see this time of year. And that is really impacting our tourism industry, of course, and harming the vacations, the end of the summer, while the kids get ready to go back to school on September 1st. International carriers, as we know, have ceased flying to Israel, some of them indefinitely, and many more until the end of the month, while we wait and we see.
The region is once again on the brink of war. Israel has preemptively struck Iranian terror proxy Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and averted a massive missile attack. Now, Israel remains on high alert as it awaits a potential retaliation. Joining me for an analysis of the situation is Dr. Barak Books, a senior research fellow and Patterson Chair in Security and Intelligence at the School of Communication and Department of Political Studies at Bar-Ilan University, and Dr. David Menashri, an expert in Islamic resistance and modern Iranian history from the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern and African Studies at Tel Aviv University. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So, Dr. Books, let's start with you. You know, Israel preemptively struck Hezbollah to avert, a major missile attack that the terror group had planned. Now, for the past 10 months, Hezbollah has said that it does not want war with Israel, that they want to avert all-out war. And yet this attack, had it gone ahead, would have included missiles even to Tel Aviv, would have essentially been a major declaration of war. You know, so has Hezbollah changed its posture? Are they now ready for war with Israel?
We can say that we're in 10 months of a war of attrition. The north is practically a security zone, and many inhabitants of the north are being evacuated. So I cannot say we're not in a war. What Hezbollah did is define the retaliation on the assassination of Mr. Shukur, who was number 2 at Hezbollah. And they said and defined it that they have finished their retaliation as for today.
Now, the Islamic Republic has been greatly embarrassed by Israel twice now. The Islamic Republic has said it's backing down from a retaliation against Israel directly for now. Has it truly done so, or is it using Hezbollah to retaliate? And how much sway does the Islamic Republic truly have on Hezbollah, Professor Menashri?
Well, they have much influence on Hezbollah. Unlike some of the other proxies, Hezbollah is the most committed, but not always. Now, Iran have established and initiated proxy to come to its aid and support in time that Iran needs. They were not supposed to be calling Iran to come and defend us. So Iran is, Khamenei is very calculated. He's maybe opportunist, but he's not adventurist. And he's thinking the most important thing for him is Iran. It is not the interest of Iran at this stage. And he said it from the first day, October 7th. They are not going to interfere in this war because they have much more to lose than to gain. Right now, the situation, I don't know, they are devastated. I don't think they have a reason to. Because what happened today, it really, it serves their interest. The war is not over. Israel is waiting for attack from Iran and also from Lebanon, if not today, tomorrow. So, and in the meantime, I must say that our citizens in the north that thought that maybe now this will bring an end to their misery, there is no solution.
And back to you, Dr. Brooks, even if war doesn't break out this week between Israel and Hezbollah, the threat will remain. So how can Israel allow Hezbollah, a much stronger enemy than Hamas, to remain on its northern border? I mean, even if they move back past the Litani, would it only be inviting another October 7th, no further down the line? I mean, so perhaps with a stronger and even better prepared enemy. I mean, so what's your analysis of this?
Indeed, we forgot only one thing, that today the summit of Cairo is continuing with a few days of negotiations towards an agreement. Hassan Nasrallah said and proclaimed that if an agreement with Gaza will be achieved, then he will stop and cease all war. I want to add another thing. There is a draft, a French draft of an agreement with Lebanon that was presented in Lebanese television, the channel Al Jadid, in May. And it noted that the forces of Hezbollah will retaliate 10 kilometers to the north, and UNIFIL will gain much more forces, maybe backed by French forces. But the main thing is that the Lebanese army will be strengthened. In the draft, it's noted 15,000 soldiers, but practically now, the Lebanese army began to draft 1,500 or 2,000 forces to be on the border. I don't know if it will be effective or not, but it is a trial of gaining some sort of a ceasefire. About the infrastructure will stay, but I want to note that there are opposition voices against Hezbollah, which branded itself as the protector of Lebanon, but protecting Lebanon by regaining it into the Stone Age is not a protection.
And Professor Menasher, I want to come back to you. You said that Iran's proxies were meant to serve it and not the other way around. Should, this war continue to escalate and full-out war between Israel and Hezbollah were to evolve, would Iran intervene in any way, do you think?
Well, we don't know. At this time, it's not their interest. If there will be a war, and by that time Iran will have nuclear power, military, it's something else. Iran now must buy its time. It deals with the United States. The whole story about animosity and that's everything is okay, but Iran and United States are speaking with each other. So it's premature to say. It is only the first day. Nasrallah said, we solved the problem for today. This is our retaliation for today. He didn't promise anything for tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, I say, Israel is a problem. With this situation, if it remains, you are absolutely right. That's not solves any problem to Israel. We didn't change the equation. In Gaza, we have to continue. At the same time, we have to continue with the North. And in between, I repeat myself, I feel pity for the inhabitants of the North that after 10 and a half months, there is you don't see anything in the horizon.
But, we know that the Islamic Republic of Iran is behind Hamas, it's behind Hezbollah, it's funding, coordinating their attacks on Israel. And yet, as you said, it's remained largely unscathed by this ongoing war. I mean, so why has Israel not taken the war directly to the Islamic Republic, cut off the head of the snake, so to speak?
Well, because it is not that simple. First, I don't know if you can do it without the United States. Second, we are not going to conquer Iran. And it is very difficult. Many years ago, I established Center of Iranian Studies. One of our first meetings was about Iran, to attack Iran. There have been two generals speaking there. One was former Air Force commander, and one was former intelligence commander. I came back. My wife was eager to know what did the general say. Professor, she didn't care. And I told her, I don't know what they say. I tell you what I understand. We don't have military option. And it remains so until now. I think it's very, very difficult.
Disconcerting to hear that. Dr. Brooks, do you share that assessment?
About Iran or Lebanon?
Both.
I think that in Lebanon we have a strong opposition, which either speaks or there were some insurgents against Hezbollah, skirmishes of Christians firing against Hezbollah or catching on Mount Lebanon Hezbollah insurgents or perpetrators against churches. So we can see some sort of resentment that goes to the activity of operating against Hezbollah.
And you mentioned the people of Lebanon. How are they reacting to the possibility of war? And do they support Hezbollah and what it's doing?
I would like to quote Gibran Basil, who's a Christian, a close ally, or formerly close ally of Nasrallah. And he said, we're not cheap bargains of Hezbollah. They're playing us as in a roulette in a casino. So many people do not want this war. And many of them want to live their regular lives. And as we can see, Beirut, and this is the argument, is some sort outside of these skirmishes. But we see other problems in Lebanon. They don't have any electricity, the currency collapsed. The country without the war is on the verge of breakdown. So this war comes when Lebanon is ill-prepared. Hezbollah is prepared, but the Lebanese people are not.
So taking a heavy toll on Lebanon as well. Well, I want to thank you both for offering your analysis
Thank you so much.
today, and let's hope for calmer and better days. Thank you. And despite the escalation between Israel and Hezbollah, the Gaza ceasefire talks are continuing in Cairo. The Gaza war is now on its 324th day, with action continuing on the ground in the south and center of the enclave.
Hamas has sent a team to Cairo where U.S., Egyptian, and Qatari mediators are meeting with Israeli negotiators trying to reach the elusive hostage for ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Hamas says its team is being briefed but will not negotiate. Some progress is reported on disputes related to control on the Philadelphia route on the Egyptian-Gaza border. Egypt reportedly passed amended sections of the deal regarding the Rafah border crossing and the Philadelphia corridor to the Gaza terror group. Hamas is reportedly sticking with its demands for an end to the war and a complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Israel and U.S. officials claim that some progress was made in constructive and ongoing talks in Cairo. Last night, mass protests were held around the country, organized by the hostage families, demanding a deal to bring the hostages home from Hamas captivity. Day 324 of the war in Gaza, and troops are operating in South and Central Gaza, confronting Hamas forces from the air and on the ground. In the south, the 162nd Division killed dozens of terrorists in ground battles and Air Force strikes in the Tel Sultan area of Rafah. The fighters located many weapons, including explosives and charges. In Rafah, a terror tunnel was destroyed where a terror squad was killed last week. Troops are operating also in the Zaytun area as part of efforts to expand the central Netzarim corridor. Over the weekend, the IDF announced the names of 4 fallen soldiers killed in Zaytun. Israel's toll in the ground offensive against Hamas in Gaza and in military operations along the border with the Strip now stands at 340.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with lows of around 25 degrees Celsius or 78 Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see mostly sunny skies and hot weather. Expect top temperatures seeing highs of about 35 degrees or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.